Back to Dante. He's been shooting it well. He'll fire a three. He'll hit. Dante Exum. X marks the spot. Crosses to Exum. Wide open, unguarded three. Buries another one. Hayward, left side three is good. Kicks to the corner. Right corner three for Hayward. Rattles around and down. Left side three for Hayward. Bang. Oh, boy. Rotates to Trey. Straight down the barrel three. Splash again. Trey flares to Exum. Catch and shoot three. Got it. Oh, my. Millsap, right side three. Got another one. They're throwing it in a hula hoop. Trey Burke, three right side. Another one. The Jazz have hit 9. And Rodney Hood, right side, rises for three. Splash. And that's a new Jazz franchise record. Rodney for three. Another. And the franchise record grows in the first half. Left side, Ingles for three. And the Jazz extend their franchise record 3.5 to 12. Rodney Hood making his third start for the Jazz. Has it up top. Catch and shoot three. Good. And the Jazz have 13 three-pointers on the evening. Back to Rodney. Open for three. Hood is good for three. And the Jazz have 14 tonight. Here's Hood. Left side. Three ball. Got it. Ties the franchise record with 15. It is tip-off. What a night for the Jazz, and they're shooting as they blow out the Charlotte Hornets. We'll talk about that. The Millers made an announcement yesterday. We'll touch on that as well. The NBA 5 coming in direction. We'll dig into 4 and 5-man lineups of the Jazz. Shows you some really good trends. There was a lot to talk about, plus your question. It's tip-off. Hello, how are you? Welcome to the show. Thanks so much for tuning in. It's the March 17th edition of Tip-Off. I'm Dave Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA Insider. Glad to have you with us. You can follow us on Facebook. Give us the like at David Locke or Locked On Sports. Also, the Google Plus community is active. Ryan Dangerfield just posted a little poll question. That's at Locked On Sports Google Plus community. You can follow that as well, and I'm on Twitter at Locked On Sports. And finally, if you get a chance, 5 stars are always nice on iTunes or Stitcher, whatever app you are listening to this. What's the plan for the show? We'll do our regular NBA 5, and then we'll touch deep into the Jazz, talk about last night, and might show you one play clip and look at some lineup data. I do want to start off the show touching on the Miller announcement yesterday. I have to be honest, I was kind of out of touch for some. I mean, I knew this was going on. I didn't listen to the radio. I don't know what people's reactions were from things. I actually was, my kids are on spring break, so my daughter and Memo and I and one of Memo's friends went and played golf. Memo's the best person on the planet. So I didn't hear a lot of talk radio. I did not comment on it a lot because, frankly, the impact on the Jazz is very minimal, and I'm not an expert in corporate business, particularly that of billion-dollar corporate business. But from a Jazz impact, all the deals still go through the Miller family, which has always been willing to spend the money to be successful and build a championship-caliber team. If you stem back to the luxury tax days, the buying of the pick for Rudy Gobert was probably a pretty good decision. I think they've gotten their money's worth on that $3 million. Greg will still represent the family at the Board of Governors. Gail will still be largely in charge of, still kind of overseeing great elements of what the Jazz are. So from a Jazz standpoint, Dennis Lindsey's in charge of player personnel. Quinn Snyder's your head coach. They still report in the same fashion they did before. I think there's no impact. I guess there were some people that tried to say that it was setting up for a sale of the franchise, which led me to receive some conversations with the Miller family that they just want to make sure that that is perfectly clear, that that is just not a part of this at all in any way, shape, or form. The team is not leaving Utah. It is not for sale. And anyone who is trying to create that out of the story is really making stuff up, basically. Is just kind of taking the next step or 5 steps beyond where the story goes. From a corporate standpoint, I think I don't really know corporate business, so I'm probably not one who can really comment on anything of that nature. But often family-owned businesses grow to a point in which they need to expand outside the family, and I'm kind of assuming that this is the natural progression from. I was kind of stunned how long Greg had been the CEO. 7-year run's a long time. So I don't know corporate business. I can't really comment on that, but I can tell you from a Jazz standpoint that the announcement from the Miller family is one that should be unimpactful to the Utah Jazz, and unimpactful to its status in Utah, and irrelevant to how business is done. So just thought I'd start there. Let's head to the NBA 5.
This is Dante X. And you were locked on Jazz.
Oklahoma City dropped one last night, but everything I look at still shows that they have a pretty considerable edge over the Pelicans in that fight. We're watching that closely, guys, because if from the Jazz standpoint, if Oklahoma City makes the playoffs, then they send their pick to Philadelphia, and then that starts the clock on the Jazz pick, meaning that they get it in 2017, which might be most important just from using it as a possible trade asset, because it just means that there's a defined time by which you're getting it. So, or at least with the protections on it. So I think that's probably the most important part about that is why we're keeping on it. Ennis had another big numbers night, but Ennis kind of reverted back to Utah Ennis. 19 points, 13 rebounds in 37 minutes. No assists and minus 10 plus minus, worst on the team. That's a step backwards for him. That's him reverting back to Utah Ennis. We've always known he could grab rebounds and score points, but the no assists and the negative 10 was a little bit of a disturbing. From Dallas gets that win. That's a good one. And Rajon Rondo at 5 of 8 from the floor last night. He still manages to not get to the free throw line. The one that I've kind of want to keep an eye on with Dallas recently, ever since our game against them, is Dirk. Chandler Parsons returned last night, and he had 31. But this is a hard one to talk about, but Dirk, 36 years old in his 17th season, may have really hit something. His shooting percentage is down 4 percentage points from last year. His three-point shooting percentage is down 3 percentage points from last year. He didn't look right. I remember saying it on the broadcast. It was the first time I thought I'd seen what looked like an old Dirk against us. I wonder if in the playoffs he'll be able to ramp it back up to another level. But he just didn't look quite right. The last 7 games, he's shooting 39% from the field. He is hitting his threes. He's at 47%. But it's a little bit of a slide. I mean, since February 1, he's averaging 15 points a game. That's not quite Dirk. And his minutes are now down to 28, 29. So they're going to need Chandler Parsons and some of these other guys to carry them along the way. Interesting in Sacramento, George Karl's taken over, and Sacramento, who lost last night to Atlanta, has by far and worse defense in the NBA since Karl's taken over. Not even close, actually. Should be a little disturbing if you're a Sacramento Kings fan that they have not made any strides at all. They allow 110 last night to Atlanta. David Blatt is on a weird one with Cleveland. He's insistent that the team must get the 2nd seed. Okay, I guess it means that you have home. I don't think Cleveland's going to struggle playing on the road against anyone other than Atlanta, and that's pretty well dead set. They lost last night 106-92. I still sometimes feel like Blatt is incongruent with the NBA game. Jazz next up is Washington, and that's a good win for them last night, 105-97. They now go on a 4-game trip. That'll be the Jazz final game against an Eastern Conference team this year. And the middle of the East is pretty interesting. Chicago is sitting at 4. Washington is now a half game behind them. Toronto's sitting at 3, and Washington's only a game behind them. So that 2-3, and I think that actually might have a little impact. Actually, I guess it depends if you care about the second round, but home court 4-5 certainly would matter. Washington's now won 4 in a row, so the Jazz have a real task on their hands. And Memphis is not right. Memphis is 2.5 games or 2 games up on the number 2 spot in the West, but they're not right. And you go back to the Tony Allen being suspended before we saw them for this fight with Nicolaithis in practice. And just the way they're playing last night, Denver didn't play any of their regular guys, and Memphis was on the ropes against them. Memphis's recent wins have just not bestowed a lot of confidence in you. We beat them on March 3rd. Since then, they've been about muddling around 500. There's something not entirely right with what's going on with Memphis. That, my friends, is the NBA 5.
Hey, this is Gordon Hayward. I want to hear from you. Call 801-200-3738 and ask me a question. That's 801-200-3738 to ask me a question.
Last night, very, very impressive performance from the Utah Jazz in so many different ways. I mean, I think that maybe what was most impressive to me was that they hit those threes early, and so often when you hit those threes early, it ends up causing you to kind of break out of your game. Don Nelson used to always talk about if a team hit a bunch early, he knew he was in good shape for the rest of the night because it would mean that the team would kind of, at some point in time, the team would balk a little bit out of their regular system and blow and start, playing loose and free and doing things they shouldn't do. And last night the Jazz just did the opposite. They just stayed inside of their game the entire way. They never broke out of how they play. We didn't have a crazy offensive night. We did have a crazy defensive night. I mean, once again, the defense was incredible. 16 points in the first quarter, 14 in the second, 16 in the third. We only scored 9 points in the fourth quarter last night, without anyone really taking notice of that one, and ended up not shooting particularly well. But we held the Hornets to 29.5% shooting, 26% from three. Talking to Kevin Pelton a lot recently, trying to figure out how much of this is real and how much of this is not. The comment he keeps making to me, he's a little reluctant to call it real completely. His point to me is that the three-point shooting percentage of opponents is abnormally low. So over the last 16 games, teams are shooting 31% from three against us. And I think I mentioned this the other day. I'm not sure I totally attribute it to Kevin. But he believes if that regresses back to the league average, are you still good enough defensively? Now, I will say I'm a little bit not certain why this has to regress totally back to the league average. I mean, there's some argument that as long as we have Favors and Gobert defensively on the floor, then why should we actually have to be league average in our defense of the three-point line? Right now, if you want to play around with this for a second, what he's talking about is the league average is right around 34.8% for three. And in the last 16 games, the Jazz have been remarkable. They've held people to 31%. So if the league average teams are taking somewhere in the range of 22 threes a night, and they're making them against us right now at 31%, then they're making almost 7 a game. And if you're, what did I say? Now I just blew it. Did I say 22 or 25 threes attempts a game? Here, let's take the median. Let's actually just do this right. Let's do this completely right for everybody so they can kind of see what Kevin's talking about. So the league average is about 22 attempts at 35%. So if you take 22 attempts at 35%, then most teams are making 7.5 threes a game. Cleveland's like the ultimate example of the average right now. The Jazz, on the other hand, at 31% on those three attempts, are allowing teams to only make 6. So it's only 1 3 a game. Now that's a 3 a game, but the Jazz differential, if you add that, if you follow what Kevin's saying, this is a kind of another one of those moments where I get pretty excited about the team. If you go and take that, our differential is 8 right now. Almost 9 in the last 16 games. Fine, if it gets down to league average, it's still at 5 or 6. Plus 5 or 6 is 50-plus wins. I mean, the numbers on what this team are doing, I can run through them, are just absurd. There's, Kevin talks about the plexiglass principle, which is that teams that improve kind of take a step back, and I got it. I'm overly optimistic, I guess. I joked with him, I'm paid to be optimistic, but I'm not. I'm just running the numbers. I'm looking at things, and what we're doing is absurd. It's driving Kevin crazy. He gets texts from me after every game. It's like, is this real? I'm with you guys. I can't totally figure out what's real and what's not. They're playing beautiful basketball. There's an energy and a contagiousness to what's going on. And this is very non-numbers of me right now. But there is an energy, there's an excitement, there's a contagiousness, there's an infectiousness to what's taking place with this team right now that can't be bottled for 82 games. Okay, so that's what's not real to me. That there's just a togetherness and an excitement and everything's happy and some of these guys have lost for long enough and that will wear out with expectations next year. That won't be able to be replicated. That's unique to our time and circumstance right now. And that's where Kevin may be completely right about the plexiglass theory. But and actually here's a play that really to me is the ultimate example of what I'm talking about. And we'll take a look at selfishness. That's it. Play. This Trey Burke 3 right here is just a remarkable example of the Utah Jazz playing obvious unselfishness. Hayward, fast break, throws it up top to Millsap. Rudy cuts like he's supposed to. Trey trails and bang for 3. It's nothing overwhelming, but every guy made an unselfish play here. Okay? And here's Gordon, open floor. He doesn't have the numbers. He takes the Euro step through the lane. It's going to be a tough shot. He sees out of the corner of the eye that Elijah is there. Actually, another key of this thing is watch Trevor. Trevor goes all the way to the rim here. By going all the way to the rim, Trevor brings the last defender with him, right? See how that defender's now with Trevor? Elijah gets it open 3. Rudy could be selfish and stop right now, but instead, Rudy opens himself up, brings the defender to him. Trey Burke's last guy up. You've now got all 5 guys on the offense. You make the pass to Trey. Bang, and what do you got? But you've got obvious unselfishness. That is the time and place of the team. But there's other aspects of this that are not time and place of the team, that are real. For 41 games, and this to me is the one that I have a hard time just throwing away. And this is what I'm about to give you right now, to me, is what would give me, if I'm a Jazz fan, the most giddiness that exists. Because this is really Quinn Snyder's system coming together, working, and having an impact. I mean, we probably don't talk about Quinn enough. I really like Quinn. I enjoy my time with him. I think we get along. I wouldn't call us friends. I don't think that's fair to Quinn. He probably has real friends. But I think sometimes I probably don't give him enough credit because I don't want to sound like I'm just blowing smoke all the time. But this is really the Quinn Snyder stat to me. For the last 41 games, the Jazz are 24-17. That 41 games, guys, stems back to Wednesday, December 17th against Miami. We weren't right yet, right? We just lost to Washington and New Orleans, and that's 41 games since then. There's a lot that's taking place. Alec is done for the season at one point. Cantor gets traded. There's a lot that takes place in this process. And in that half a season, well, not only can you extrapolate 41 games out to 24 to 48 wins, but the Jazz are the 15th best offensive team in the league, which truly to me is beyond stunning. When the starting point guard for some of that period of time, not the majority of it, but probably about equal of it, or at least a good deal of it, right now, I mean, really, right now, let's be honest, Trey's like in my pack ratings, he's like the 3rd worst offensive player in the league. Like, he's got to figure it out. It's coming. Quinn took some time with me yesterday to show me all the things he's doing really, really well and some of the great abilities beginning to have to pass and see the floor, and he's defending. He's doing a lot of things really well. His shot is just killing him, though. So one of your primary scorers is inefficient. You've lost Alec, who was inefficient. Frankly, losing Alec statistically doesn't hurt you at all. You are playing with Elijah Millsap and Joe Ingles a lot of the game, and you're 15th in the league offensively? That, to me, might be the biggest testament to Quinn. But more stunning, or equally kind of eye-opening and easy to grasp onto, that 15th argument's going to be hard around the water cooler for people, is that the Jazz are 3rd best defensive team over the last 41 games. They're the 5th best overall team in terms of differential and efficiency. 5th best in the last 41 games. There's nothing about that that's not real. And that's where, if you believe in Dennis Lindsey and Justin Zanuck and Walt Perrin and Dave Fredman and Quinn understanding his system, and you make 1 or 2 minor adjustments to this team, you bring over an Ante Tomic as a 4th big, you add a a shooting two or another shooting wing to your team to add a little bit there, and whatever other adjustments you decide to make, and Trey makes his natural progressive jump in the third year in the NBA, then yeah, the optimism should be through the roof. There should be some caution, I guess, that yeah, it doesn't work this way. It's not how this is supposed to happen, but the numbers are they're just mind-boggling. And we're going to find out. 9 of our final 16 games are against teams 500 or below. 500 or above. 9 of our final 16. So we got some real games coming up. We got the Warriors followed by with Portland. We got Oklahoma City. We got a Phoenix. We got a Memphis, a Portland, a Dallas, and Houston. This is quite a stretch here to close it. Now here's a bit of silly optimism. This is where you get crazy. But if everything turns golden, this is what's going on. The 89-99 Spurs, the 89, I have that written wrong, so it must be the 89-90 or 88-89 Spurs team, or it might be 98-99 team. That's what it would be. Spurs team of Duncan and Robinson is thought to be one of the best defensive teams in the history of the NBA. Its defensive rating is 92.1. They had a year better in 03-04 where they were 91.6, but the league was off a little bit that year. So 92.1 that year. The Jazz defensive rating over the last 16 games is 91.6. That's only 16 games. But only 16 games, by the way, is 20% of the season. So for 20% of the season, the Jazz have been playing defense at a historic rate, like one of the best teams, at the same rate as arguably the best modern defensive team in the NBA. I just said that out loud, and it's accurate. And this is where the optimism goes nuts. If you're going to be a championship caliber team, 34 of the last 37 championship caliber teams have had a defensive rating in the top 10. I don't see any reason why, unless we do something really weird in how we build this team, that we're not a top 5 defensive team. Certainly top 10 for the foreseeable future, or top 5 defensive team. I'm not telling you we're getting a championship anytime like in the next year or two, but I do think that we're going to, if built correctly with this young crew, we're going to compete for it stunningly fast if this defense is real. Get your season tickets now. Don't wait. They're going to be tough tickets. When you want that section, it's sold out. It's going to be a bummer. That's all I guess I'm telling you. There's some aspects of last night's game that are amazing. The Hornets are the best defensive rebounding team in the league at 80%, and the Jazz crushed them on the offensive glass. Crushed them. That's when you're taking your strength against where you're great, number 1 league offensive rebounding, against the number 1 offensive rebounding team in the league, and you crush them. Nobody can stop that then, right? So we got the offensive rebound is suddenly becoming a mammoth part of our game. It's interesting how you got to evaluate Trevor, because he's grabbing 2 or 3 a game. It's pretty valuable stuff. Trevor's an interesting player. He's got a very tradable contract. He's got a very interesting kind of role. He doesn't do everything quite the way you want. He's the type of player in the offseason that you could decide, we're going to upgrade that position and make a trade, and then you really miss him. And then all of a sudden when it's over, you realize, he brought a lot of stuff to the table. We don't have it anymore. That's how the stuff gets screwed up. You want more optimism? Should I wait for? No, I teased it. I teased it, so we'll get to. Let me pull it up. All right, these are the lineups of the Utah Jazz that are 5-man lineups. That I don't think I can zoom to 200%, which is what I like to do for you, because I think you'll lose. Yep. Oh no, perfect. These are the 5-man lineups that have played at least 50 minutes that have players that are still on our team. Okay, let's be honest with what I just said. I eliminated Ennis, and the fact that he just somehow disastrously killed this team all the time with plus minus. And what's really interesting here is here are your most commonly used lineups. 11 of them, and 9 of the 11 are positive. So the Dante Exum Alec Burks, Joe Ingles, Trevor Booker, Rudy Gobert lineup that was used early in the year for 54 minutes is negative. Terrible defensively. Not great. All right. It's worth noting. It's probably a lineup that we'll never see any. The Trevor Booker, Dante Exum, Gordon Hayward, Rodney Hood lineup, for whatever reason, has been negative this year. Hasn't scored well. Small sample size. This is a big deal. 11 of your primary lineups that you have of guys left on your roster right now are all positive. Here's the other big deal. Anything under 100 defensively is really good. And look at what we have here. 95, 90, 90, 100, 99, 104 has Alec in it. 87, 106 has Alec in it. 114, which is Trevor Booker, Dante, Derek Favors, Gordon Hayward, and Joe Ingles. And for whatever weird reason, that lineup has been in scoring a lot. And then the Jazz new starting lineup with Trevor Booker in for Rudy Gobert has been just ridiculous at 40.2 differential. Something's funky there, maybe last night along the way. So all but 3 of the lineups are 100 or less defensively, which again is kind of the point I've been trying to prove this whole time, is that Rudy is unbelievable and has been marvelous, but what's taking place is more than just Rudy, but Rudy is marvelous. Now, let's go look at 4-man lineups, and we have many more here. I took 100 minutes as the break point, and I haven't counted the number. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 26, I think it was, maybe 25. And only 5 of 6 of these are negative. Incredible. So let's call it 25 because it's nice. So only 6 of the 25 are negative. The lineup of Burke, Favors, Hayward, and Ingles, that foursome for whatever reason is negative. The lineup of Ingles, Gobert, Exum, and Booker is negative. Some of this is going to Trey, Rudy, Elijah, Trevor. And some of it's just weird, right? Some of these are small sample sizes. Something goes bad. Dante, Trevor, Rudy, and Rodney gets ugly. Trey, Alec, Gordon, and Trevor. And then the final one is really just about even. Oh, no, it's -3. Is Trey with Elijah, Derek, and Gordon. There's no, I don't think there's any, there's no trend here. But what's incredible also is if I decide to just subjectively take the top 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 lineups, only 2 of them are negative. Of the 18 most used 4-man lineups, only 2 of them are negative. It's pretty stunning. Okay? And again, to the point of defense. So look at our top 20 most 4-man lineups. Only 5 of them are over 100. One of them has Alec Burks in it with Trey and Derek and Gordon early in the year, and frankly that has Ennis as the 5th guy in that lineup. The next one is Trey, Gordon, Joe, and Derek, which is frankly got Ennis as the next guy in that lineup. The next one is Dante, Joe, Trevor, and Rudy, and it's 100.4, and hard to tell why. Trey, Gordon, Trevor, and Rudy's at 103, but they're scoring out of the world. And then that's it of the top 20 used 4-man lineups. I mean, there's some more in here. Alec bumps back in with Trevor, and there's another weird. But look, 4 more. This, me, is what's stunning. Is that whatever's coming together, whatever style play we're doing defensively, it's working universally across the board. I'm crazy optimistic. I'm probably too far ahead. But I kind of feel like at this point I'm gonna be crazy optimistic and with a caveat of understanding the crazy optimism would be historic. Without drafting Tim Duncan, LeBron James, Alonzo Mourning, I mean the biggest win jumps in a 2 or 3 year period of time in NBA history, they happened because you drafted Kevin Durant. They happened because you drafted a player like that. And we didn't do that unless you think Rudy's that guy. I'm not willing to go there yet. and yet we're seemingly on the verge of that. It does feel to me as though we're on the verge of a massive jump. A little faith in what, and some of this also, by the way, has to do with what Dennis and Justin, they could decide, you know what, we could really make a mistake in the off. This is going to be no fans going to hear this, but we could really make a mistake in the off season by trying to jump this thing ahead. As young as our guys are, we're better off going, let's say we finish at 36, 37. We're better off trying to get to 40 or 45 than 55. And a year from now, we'll go try to get to 55. That might be a better answer. I'm talking as though, it all happens right away. We'll see. There might be some real intelligence to, hey, let's let Dante get into his third year. Let's let Rudy get into his third year as a starter. Let's let Rodney get into his third year. Let's give Trey another year of trying to figure this out before we, frankly, move him to go get a veteran to be Dante's kind of stalwart. Let's make sure we know exactly what we have with Trey. Let's let Alec have a year in the system and understand what he has, right? I mean, because you go add another shooting guard to this team, and your four are now Gordon, Rodney, Alec, or a shooting wing. Elijah and Joe don't play. Joe's pretty valuable, but that makes sense. And Elijah, we'll still see. Let's not, Elijah's still, I think, struggling a little bit with the NBA game. So maybe you got to be careful, right? You're adding it. If you add on Tomic, it's a nice piece to have a 7'2" backup center. It's not particularly defensive minded, but he's big. How does it impact Trevor? Look how good Trevor's been since he suddenly became the third big, right? There's a lot of pieces here. You got to. There is a really strong argument to why you slow the train down and make a natural progression instead of trying to make a historic progression. But the pieces are all together that tells you this thing is heading in the right direction. It's just awesome. That is tip-off. Have a good one. We'll talk to you tomorrow. We'll look at Dante and Rodney's progression, and they're growing up tomorrow.